like Chris said, my name is Dan. I am IT manager with Gehl Foods. I've been there since 2007. I only fairly recently became IT manager. At the time of our AFS implementation, I was a senior systems analyst, so I did a lot of the development. I've since actually switched kind of sides of the department. I'm now doing more help desk and infrastructure, but luckily I still get to do a little dev work, so they haven't gotten me completely out of it. So who is Gehl Foods? Gehl Foods is a leader in beverages, sauces, and puddings that safely hold their fresh flavor without refrigeration. What that means is it's shelf stable. So Alex earlier had talked about shelf stable orange juice. So what we do is similar, but more in like the dairy realm. We are the most diverse low acid aseptic facility in North America. Orange juice is high acid, so it's actually a lot of times a little easier to do. So what we do is a little more technologically advanced. We make our product shelf stable through the aseptic process, which is taking a sterile container and combining it with sterile product. We maintain sterility by rapid heating and cooling. So by taking it up to several hundred degrees very quickly and then cooling it very quickly, we remove all microbial activity and it remains shelf stable. By doing it quickly, it doesn't have the kind of burnt taste that's common in like really cooking milk or other processes. We are a supplier to national brands, private labels, chain restaurants, grocers, and more than 1,000 food distributors. I had the pleasure meeting a couple folks from Florida Food Service yesterday. I popped online real quick on our distributor locator. I saw that they carry 4 of our SKUs, so I was really happy to see that. We are the largest brand of dispensed cheese in the world. I guarantee our cheese is within 5-mile radius of here. We're in a lot of major, professional stadiums. I'm partial to Miller Park and Lambeau Stadium, both of which have our product. So we are current or prior partners to nearly every major brand and retail private label in ready-to-drink nutrition. So we have a lot of nutritional drinks in private label format and other formats. We have been, prior to 2015, we were a family company since 1896. During that time, the family, whom I love, focused mostly on manufacturing. So their mindset was, if we make it, sales will get rid of it. So they kind of just focus on the manufacturing and not so much on the sales analytics and just being smart about what we sell. So it was just more, let's just make it and get rid of it. So we were purchased by private equity in 2015, a company by the name of Windpoint Partners out of Chicago. That has really drastically changed the mindset around Gehl Foods. We've become a lot more data-driven, a lot more analytical in kind of the way we approach things. Our annual revenue is roughly $250 million. We have 400 plus employees. When I started 9 years ago, we were a little over 200, so we have been growing rapidly. And we are located in Germantown, Wisconsin, if the Miller Park reference didn't give that away. All right, so where were we? Kind of how I had mentioned, we were kind of very manual. We didn't have complex systems in place. It was really yeah, that looks about right. I remember one of our salespeople in particular would sit about once a month. He would sit with a phone book stack of paper, and he would, with all of our claims, and he would just sign them off, and he would get through this phone book stack of paper way too quick. So he wasn't really validating anything. It was just, paying it. So were we overpaying? That says probably. I would actually say it's most definitely. We were overpaying probably by quite a bit. As far as our manual trade promotional analytics, different salespeople had different analytics that they kind of compiled themselves. So some would put it in Excel, some would put it in email, some would write it on a napkin. It was pretty all over the place. Where we saw some of the best analytics were industries like C-store, where we have really, really large customers, but fewer of them. So it was easier to compile some of those trade analytics. But it was kind of a crapshoot as to what we had for any particular customer. Any of our P&Ls were done manually. It was a compilation of various reports and Excel information, came from all over the place. There were estimations for trade. We would just plug in a standard percentage. We didn't know if that percentage was accurate, but we plugged it in. We also plugged in standard percentages for like brokerage and loss factors, pretty much anything. So it wasn't terribly useful or accurate, but we're in a better place now. So we didn't have very good spend variance reporting. Everything was just at high level assumptions. And our deductions were really bad. The deductions just kind of sat as outstanding AR balances. We didn't have any organization to it. We would have like a Cisco customer, actually 2 Cisco customers that we would have a deduction come through, and we would just have to kind of play around with where the AR was. So it wasn't very good at all. So then we implemented AFS, the TPM product for food service and G2. We initially kicked it off back in November of 2013. I was not on the initial project team. I was secretly a little jealous, but because it looked pretty cool. The guy that was on it was new, and it was a good project to get him kind of acquainted with our business. And he left the company, so I got to do it. So I was kind of excited about that. So through that process, we changed a few things, and then implemented in June of 2014, and it was messy. It was really, really messy. Our customer service department didn't have a lot of good processes in place. They had assumptions that this product would make their lives so easy they wouldn't have to do anything with trade. There were just bad assumptions there. They had also saved up claims for several months prior to go live, so we started with a backlog. They thought, oh, it's just going to go right through the system. We'll just massively upload them and all will be well. Well, that wasn't the case. So we definitely had some hiccups there, which is why there's a little bit of a gap there between the TPM go live and the G2 sales go live. The G2 sales go live was in May of 2015. And then pretty much as soon as we implemented the sales piece, we started working on the profitability piece. And then February of 2016, we went live with the profitability piece. So that it has been great so far. All right, so how do we get there? We got there through a tremendous amount of growth with accountabilities, cultural changes, terminology, making sure we're all talking the same language, data changes and process changes. So a couple of the biggest probably were cultural and accountability changes. When we initially started, contracts were a problem. Nobody felt that they should be entering contracts. Sales was like, hey, we should be out there selling. Somebody else should be entering my contract for me. Customer service, the sales support was customer service was like, well, I don't know what the contract is. The salespeople know what the contract is. The brokers are like, I don't know. I don't know what the contract is, because we had switched brokerage. So we were kind of in a pickle. So we started building some accountabilities around that. I think that it's called the RACI document AFS helped us develop, that kind of spelled out roles and responsibilities and accountabilities, and that really, really helped. So eventually we got to the point where we were entering contracts. Sales finally realized that they were accountable for it. Maybe not responsible for entering it, but they were accountable for the contract. So they began to get better at using brokers to do that, and so now we're definitely humming along a little better. So similar to the contract entry, there were also accountability questions around processing our pendings. So sales thought that customer service was responsible for the pendings, and the customer service thought it was sales. So as we started spelling out those accountabilities, the pendings started to drop. Cultural changes. There were, up front, there was a lot of working around the system. There were a lot of just pay this claim, override it. We got to get it paid. So we would force the the claim through the system without any validation, just pay the amount, and well, we don't get the benefit from the system by doing that. So as people saw the benefits to it, they stopped doing that. We started putting more emphasis around keeping our deduction balance lower, which was a kind of a cultural change. So the deduction balances has started dropping. And work smarter, not harder. One of the cultural feelings around Gehl Foods throughout the years was just as long as you're working, you're good. It doesn't matter what you're working on, as long as you're working hard, you're good. With kind of private equity here and with using AFS, we're starting to work smarter and not just harder. We're starting to see where our efforts should be going as far as sales, and it's been great. Terminology has been a huge one for us. It seems like everybody speaks a slightly different version of food service, kind of from my perspective. Some people use words that should not be used interchangeably. For those that are not programmers, that exclamation point and the equal sign there is not equal. So deduction is not equal to claim. A lot of our customer service department likes to use the word deduction and claim interchangeably, or at least they used to. And so when we would be having conversations about this, well, yeah, they're related, but they're not the same. So we got into a lot of communication issues because people weren't really talking with each other in a way that helped us move forward. Data, we had a lot of problem data, and I'm sure we're probably the only ones, but our customer data was pretty weak. We didn't have good relationships between customers that should be related. We had a lot of mismatched, like salespeople assigned to it. Our product master data needed a lot of work. We started adding attributes so that within the G2 hierarchy, we were able to actually slice and dice appropriately. So a lot of that was net new data. Our recipes, we worked a lot on our recipes. So historically, we had applied just a single large overhead number to all of our recipes. It kind of differed by recipe, but it was just, as our CFO likes to call it, a peanut butter spread of overhead. So we started breaking that out into different buckets like fixed overhead, variable overhead, direct labor, SG&A, and started separating those out on all of our recipes so we could actually get to a more get to a better view of our profitability at standard. We had a lot of process changes. Many of those were in accounting. We fixed our deduction problem. We actually started creating a deduction object where we would send that over to AFS and then handle that against the claims. So things got a lot better there. So our objectives in doing all of this, improve our trade spend handling, obviously what TPM is designed to do, through better financial controls and communication. We got better at contract timeliness, no longer contracts kind of written on napkins and nobody really knows what's going on. We have a naughty list where if the contracts aren't being done on time, and so that's helping. We have better identification of improper claims and deductions. So, when we were signing off the phone book of claims, we didn't know what was proper or what was improper. So now we actually can see that. So that's pretty cool. We have a lower deduction balance. It was pretty bad for a while. We have less pendings. We still have pendings. We still have work to do, but we're getting there. So some of our major goals were around the sales analytics. We really wanted information at our fingertips. Our sales department has, I think, tripled in the last couple of years, and we have all these new people in, and they're like, I want information yesterday. I don't want to have to go to this system, and get it and compile it myself. I want just a matter of fact. Like I want a system of record that I can just go to and get my sales information, and that has been G2 for us. Less massaging, kind of works along with the information at fingertips, no longer pivoting on multiple data sets within Excel. And then the huge one has been sales team and broker accountability. Back when we were kind of a family-owned company, there was not a lot of accountability for our sales team and broker community. And that was because we didn't know what we were doing. We didn't know who was doing well, who was doing bad. We could see it at a high level aggregate number, but we couldn't drill into customer or SKU level P&Ls. So AFS has helped us get there. So with profitability, we have good profitability analytics at standard. We're going to be working on variance reporting more, but at least we're at a point where we can see where we're doing at a standard level. Golden nuggets of information. I've been doing some trainings with executives and various people within the company, and they look at the G2, I just use something as an example, and they'd be like, that's not right, that can't be right. We would drill into it, and they'd be like, okay, that's right, but that's really informative. Like I knew something was down in this part of the country, but I didn't realize why it was down. Now that I see that it's pudding that's down, well, that makes sense because we lost this customer. They would just, they were actually driving the training through just questions that we were able to answer right away. It was really cool. Margin improvement, through our profitability analytics, we have found some products that we are not as good on margin as we had initially thought. Trade is a huge component of that. As a very large food service, big part of our company is food service. Some of them, can range from, small pieces of trade, but I mean, we've seen some customers have upwards of 15% trade, and that's a significant piece of the P&L numbers there. Fields in G2, so G2 has already surpassed where we are right now as far as the P&L. We have a lot of fields built into the G2 profitability that we have not yet populated, and that's waiting on us. So we, like I said, variance reporting, we don't have any of our variances in there yet, but G2's ready. It's ready to go. We just have to start sending that data along. So as soon as I can program that on the feeds, it'll be in there. So lessons learned. I have learned a ton through this. One of the things I've learned through this is that I can never be a salesperson. I've learned a lot about sales. I have so much more respect for sales. It's been really eye-opening. I heard this first one here several times through our implementation. I think Sue said it, I remember Pam said it, and that's contract is key. I didn't know what that meant, but I've come to learn that contract really is key. So when we were first, prior to actually going live with our profitability, we were looking at our projected promo allowances, and it was millions of dollars over where we would expect it to be over a period of time. And it must be a system issue. It has to be a system issue. Well, no, it was a contract issue. So some of our sales folks had confused deviated rate and deviated price. So what they were doing was where they would put $1 per case in. They should have put it in as a deviated rate. Well, they put in the $1 as a deviated price. So now the calculation's saying, well, you should be spending $40 a case in trade. Well, that's not really accurate. And then they also reversed it the other way, where the deviated price might be $40, but they put it in as a deviated rate. So now it's doing it the other way. So once we corrected those contracts, our accruals came much more back to normal. So that was a huge lesson for us, is really look at making those contracts accurate. And I was really excited to see that we can reset the estimated volume on the contracts. That should really help with some of this too, where we don't have any volume against them yet. An expectation that a system will remove work can be dangerous. I don't know where they got this from, but some of the original stakeholders in this project had this expectation that the system will remove work for them. They're all no longer with the company, but it was really it made for an interesting time. So they bucked it the whole way once they realized there's still work. You know, it's the claims don't go away. That the work just changes. It becomes more valuable. It becomes more insightful. So I really wish we would have been able to kind of change that expectation up front, but it took a long time and several job changes. So clearing filters when changing views in G2. This is one that has bit us a few times. So we have our sales view in there and we have our profitability view in there. The filters aren't always interchangeable, so we have to make sure we remove those filters before switching tabs. So that's just one that bit us a couple times, so now we're just really careful to do that. This one's kind of obvious that discipline can be hard. I don't really have much more to say there. What gets watched gets improved. So we spent a long time in our implementation looking at one thing and then jumping to another one. Well, something would slightly improve, and then when we would look the other way, it would go back up, something else would kind of drop down. So when we started looking at everything more holistically, contract timeliness, deduction balance, pending count, you know, all of those things, the whole process really started to improve. Senior management commitment is huge. When we first implemented, we had not a complete commitment from senior management. I mean, like our CFO, our finance department was very committed, but we had some in our marketing department, people that are no longer with the company didn't seem to have a full commitment at times to really getting us there. But as we started making some changes, management changes kind of across the board, we're getting more commitment there. If possible, contracts should be simplified. I remember having a conversation with one of our C-store salespeople, and she said, "I don't know how to do this. I have a deviated rate of $1, and then I have a separate deviated rate of 50 cents. And I can't create two deviated rates on one contract, and I can't do two contracts for this." And so I was like, "Well, so you have a deviated rate of $1.50. Oh, yeah, okay." So once we did that, it got better. But some of our contracts were just overly complicated. And we found that simplifying them really helps simplify a lot of our data points. Getting the manual ready is non-trivial. So I'm sure everybody knows about the manual, right? The manual that AFS keeps on you that, you know, kind of helps them guide your claims through, because the way you interact with a distributor might be different than the way another customer interacts with that same distributor. So that was really difficult in kind of getting through some of that kind of out of the gate, but our manual is really kind of to the point where things are really humming along. Are there any distributors in this room? Good. Some distributors really seem to go out of their way to make things difficult. So especially some of the larger ones. I'm not going to name names, and the only distributor I saw was Florida Food Service, and they're great. But yeah, some distributors really go out of their way to make things difficult. The processes are convoluted. If you don't say that a claim is bad within X amount of time, you can't get your funds back. So, you know, we've really started noticing those distributors more than we ever have. When we weren't validating things, we didn't know. But now we're really starting to see more systematic distributor problems, and we're starting to work through those, and we're starting to look at adjusting prices and other things to kind of combat that. So it's been really, really helpful. I had mentioned earlier that definition and terminology is important. Really getting on the same page with the definitions and terminology really, really helps drive that consistent communication, and it gets us moving forward. Different groups want data in different ways and can get confused when comparing notes. This is one I ran into not too long ago. I had somebody from finance come to me. I kind of got sideswiped into a conference call, you know, where the conference call dials you and all of a sudden you're talking to 30 people. Well, I got one of those, and it was finance and sales kind of talking together. They're like, these numbers don't match. You know, our food service salespeople say that they have these numbers, and our finance is saying that we have these numbers. Well, in kind of researching what was going on, they were looking at two completely different numbers. Our food service folks are looking at the indirect from our redistributor.foods. They're looking at the indirect, whereas our finance is looking at the direct because that's what hitting our general ledger. So they're looking at the same case, but in two different points along the process. So once they kind of realize that they're looking at similar data but different data, now they kind of are able to speak in terms of data that's similar. So here's a screenshot of our G2. Some jerk kind of made everything gray. So sorry about that. I'm sorry for the people in the back of the room that probably can't see this. This is our financial profitability projected tab. We also have a financial profitability actual tab, and then our other sales tab. So what this does is it aggregates our sales data that we send to TPM and is added with some additional feeds that we send to G2 that kind of go into our profitability information. Some of these columns are zeros. Those are ones we're still going to work on getting kind of populated as we continuously get more granular in our reporting. We started with gross sales. That's from the TPM feed. We get cash discounts next. That's in our profitability feed. And then we add the projected promo allowance. Those are numbers that come from the TPM analytics. That was the field where I had said earlier it was a few million off because of contracts. So that column is really important to us. Other, that's just kind of a placeholder for peanut butter spread, as the CFO likes to say. If we want to adjust things, we can kind of throw things in the other or other variants. Currently, we don't really use that. Taking those out gets us to our net sales number. Next, we have ingredients. Those are coming from our recipes, so those are at standard. We don't have any variance reporting there yet. We would definitely like to get there, but we're still kind of working through the information we're getting at standard. We also have our packaging data, same thing, it comes from the recipe and variances. And then we have an equipment. So with our product, our nacho cheese, we have these dispensers, these plastic dispensers that they push the button and the cheese comes out at a stadium. Well, we don't make money on those, and so we assign that cost to our products that utilize those. So some of our products utilize that, some do not. So there's a lot of zeros here. The zeros are probably like drinks or something. That gets us at this. So this is really, really long. So it took 3 different slides. So this is kind of a continuation. So that gets us at our material margin. From there, we take off direct labor, which we are getting a little more granular in, but we have a lot of labor that kind of switches between lines and switches between products. So it's still somewhat of a peanut butter spread, but that gets us at a variable gross margin. We're really, really utilizing that number a lot recently in a lot of our reporting. Our private equity partners love having that. So that's been great. Overhead, right now that's fixed overhead and variable overhead combined. Within the last week, since I've taken this screenshot, those have actually been split out, and then we have to send those over in the feed, but we're actually splitting those out, and then we're also working on splitting depreciation out of our fixed overhead costs. So that gets us at a gross margin. Next is freight. We have a lot of zeros there. We're working on freight currently. We're in the process of implementing a new TMS. So right now we don't have a lot of good information. It's kind of right now in a lot of our overhead. So equipment freight, that's kind of along the lines of our dispensers. Commissions, our commissions come out of our ERP. Those are actual commission numbers by SKU. Some of our, one thing I didn't mention earlier is, we're in the food service kind of path here. As a company, we're in food service. We're also in retail. We're also in co-man and private label. We're in all of these different industries. So we don't pay commissions on like our co-man products, for instance. So then we, where am I? Okay, so the commissions, and then we take off marketing. This allows us, if we have major marketing funds, to apply. And then next is SG&A, and that gets us at an operating margin. And all of this is sliceable and diceable by all of our hierarchy tabs. So it's really, really cool. We can go and see, hey, how are we profitable on puddings, or how are we profitable in Wisconsin versus Illinois, or any number of different ways to slice and dice it. Here you can see there's a couple of red numbers. Maybe you can see it, but they're red numbers. So it's really pointed us to a couple of products that are not doing kind of as well as we'd like to do. I mean, it's helping with some of our absorption, but it's probably something we need to really seriously evaluate whether or not we should continue to move forward with those products. So that's what I got. Any questions? Yes, sir.
You mentioned a moment ago that you couldn't put in freight. Could you expand on that?
We can put in freight. We have a field and they're ready for it, but we currently don't know our own freight. So at least not effectively. We are in the process of implementing a new TMS, so new transportation management system that should feed us a lot more freight. So while we could get at a rudimentary freight, since we're overhauling that process, we decided to just wait to implement the freight number there. Yes?
You said we had projected and actual profitability?
Yes.
So on projected, is that when the contract was created, the cost estimates, distribution trends, everything at that point in time? And then the actual would be updated?
That's exactly right. So the projected takes in an algorithm that looks first at, what is your actual volume, and then, your the expected spend against that volume based on your sales history. One of the issues we had there.
Percentages or absolutes?
Those are absolutes. Those are dollars. Yeah, sorry I had to gray it out. I didn't want to, but our CFO wasn't happy if I didn't.
So it's grabbing that snapshot in time. So where's that data being warehoused then? Because you were doing P&L at the beginning, you're having a projection, then that's stored.
I think those are two different tables within the AFS structure, projected versus the actual. One with the algorithm, one without. We are working with AFS to kind of enhance the way that the projection is done. So the reason we need the projection, mostly is because a lot of our claims are quarterly claims, so we don't have that data for 120 days potentially. You get the 90 days and then the processing time. So we use the projected to kind of figure out where we are at before the claims start trickling through.
Is there a version of the projected that is your actual budget?
Do we have a version of the projected that's actual budget? I don't know. I don't think we do. Like the annual operating plan type of budget? Yeah, no, we don't. We're not there yet. We don't use budgeting. I think that's on the roadmap. We're not there.
Assuming that all your costs are stable and flat. Or you can take the output of this and model based on certain inflation as well. Not that the D2 will do that, but it's easily can be done through Excel. You get the concept of information there.
Yes, sir.
Are you doing the sensitive calculations such as your costing and stuff on your side and sending those values over in your feeds?
Yeah, we're doing a lot of that calculation on our end. I personally wrote those, so I'm very familiar. So what we'll do is we'll take our recipe cost, multiply that by the sales feed, so we're sending our sales feed over to TPM, so we take our costs and multiply that out before we send it. So it's actually a pretty easy process because we're already, getting our sales ready for shipment, so we just multiply the costs and then we get at the standard. Oh, I'm sorry.
We had a software building tab developers in Discovery, and it was building one now, G2. One thing that
Yeah.
Have you figured that out?
Yeah, we.
That disconnect between company financials and G2?
Yeah, there's definitely a little bit of disconnect sometimes with the company financials. So we kind of allow for a certain percentage of error. The CFO kind of plans for some of that variance.
So I think a lot of that's driven by timing, when
Yeah.
certain things hit the system.
Yeah,
We found that if you try to look at a real tight window, the profit goes way off. If you look at
Yes.
a larger window, you get direction where you're going.
absolutely.
Dan, along those lines, can you share in terms of the, how you view trade spend, in terms of projected spend that you talked about earlier? Because you have to make some decisions relative to that. So, how do you guys bring in trade in terms of the P&L itself? Are there some rules or
Well, we bring in trade, as part of our
projected
net sales number. We haven't kind of gotten to the point where we're as good at analyzing it at the SKU and customer level as we'd like to be. We're just starting through that process. We have thousands of distributors and many SKUs, so we're slowly starting to work through looking at that projected promo amount, and then just looking at that as a percentage of our gross sales, and just trying to look at, hey, are we as profitable here as we should be? So in the theater business, trade spend is really, really high. So, we can't just aggregate all of our numbers and say, the trade spend should be this, because different industries have different kind of amounts of trade spend. So G2 kind of allows us to slice and dice appropriately, because the C stores are going to look at it differently than the broadline distribution salespeople, versus we even have some retail trade spend we actually do through here as well. Did that answer the question well enough? Any other questions? Yes, sir.
You mentioned how you keep your, the people entering the contracts, you keep them accountable.
Yep.
What are some ways that you go about doing that?
So there's a within TPM, there's this KPI kind of window under reports that has these really cool pie charts that show contract effectiveness. We use those, and we look at those constantly, and they're always trying to kind of get those improved. There's also some reports where you can export by salesperson, by contract, and we can kind of pivot on those a little bit and just kind of look at where the salespeople aren't entering contracts timely enough. I am looking forward to kind of utilizing that feature where you can do auto renewal, because I think that's going to help some of our effectiveness there. I just haven't gotten around to playing with that yet.
And as far as your communication with, let's just say it's a regional manager,
Mm-hmm.
what type of, techniques do you use to get them to effectively
Well,
submit those?
what's most effective is it coming from upper management. So upper management is asking for the naughty list, as we call it. And so when the CFO is sending you, reports that say who's doing what, you don't really have to talk about what you're seeing. They just know that, hey, I don't want to be on that list anymore. You don't have to be told what to do. They just do it. So that's been effective. It goes back to the upper management buy-in and commitment. Well, thank you, everybody.